Romans 7 verses 1 to 6. Dead to the law, alive to Christ. In Romans 7 verses 1 to 6, Paul lifts the curtain on a striking theological truth. The believer is no longer under the law's condemning jurisdiction, having entered into a new covenantal union with the risen Christ. Through the poignant metaphor of marriage and death, he unveils a glorious spiritual transfer, a death to the law as a covenant of works, a new belonging to Christ, and a resurrection into spirit-empowered fruitfulness. This is not abstract theology. It is deeply relational and covenantal. In Christ, we are no longer defined by condemnation, but united to our heavenly bridegroom, bearing the fruit of holiness through the indwelling power of the Spirit. In Romans 7 verses 1 to 6, Paul teaches that believers, having died to the law's condemning reign, are now joined to Christ in covenantal union, empowered by the Spirit to bear fruit in a new way of life. First, in Christ we are freed from the law's condemning dominion, Romans 7 verses 1 to 3. Paul opens with a legal axiom. The law is binding on a person only during that person's lifetime. The Greek word, kuriou, though translated as binding, more accurately expresses lordship or dominion. It pictures the law not merely as a contract, but as a ruling authority. Just as human law holds sway only over the living, death dissolves its jurisdiction. To illustrate this, Paul draws upon the relational image of marriage. A woman is bound to her husband as long as he lives, but when he dies, she is released, not just legally, but relationally. F. Bruce rightly notes that Paul's use of this analogy is not meant to be perfectly symmetrical. The law is not our former husband, but it vividly portrays the discontinuity between the old covenant realm and our new union in Christ. This is more than doctrine. It's a pastoral declaration. The believer is no longer standing trial under the law's gavel. We have died with Christ, and so the law's condemning power has no further claim. We are no longer measured by performance, but defined by pardon, no longer bound to condemnation, but joined in covenant to Him who loves us eternally. Second, in Christ we have been joined to Him in covenant union. Romans 7 verse 4. Paul now unveils the divine purpose behind our death to the law, that you may belong to another, to Him who has been raised from the dead. This is the language of covenantal belonging, of union, intimacy, and identity. The believer is not merely freed from something, but brought into something infinitely better, union with the risen Christ. As John Murray put it, nothing is more central or basic than union and communion with Christ. This covenantal bond is the fountainhead of sanctification. No longer chained to a covenant that condemned us, we now stand as the bride of Christ, betrothed to Him who lives and reigns forever. And what is the goal of this union? That we may bear fruit for God. This fruit is not mere external activity, but inward transformation. As Cranfield notes, it is the overflow of divine life, not human effort. We are no longer producing the works of the flesh. We are grafted into the true vine, John 15, drawing life and power from Christ Himself. Third, in Christ we are empowered to bear lasting fruit. Romans 7 verse 5 to 6a. Paul now turns from what is to what was. While we were in the flesh, our sinful passions, aroused by the law, were at work in our members to bear fruit for death. The law, though holy and good, functioned in the unregenerate heart as a mirror that provoked rebellion. As Thielman observes, it stirred sinful desires rather than restrained them, much like a posted rule that awakens defiance. The Greek, energator, means was actively working or being energized. Sin took the law's righteous command and weaponized it. The result? Not just wrongdoing, but death. Death moral, death spiritual, and without Christ, death eternal. But now, nuni de, Paul signals a glorious contrast. We were discharged from the law, he declares. The word, katergethemen, denotes a decisive, completed action. It means that the law's authority over us as a covenant of works, its power to condemn, to bind, to rule, is rendered void. But this does not mean we are lawless. The believer is no longer under the law as an external, condemning code, but under grace, led by the Spirit, who conforms us inwardly to the righteousness the law had always pointed toward. Fourth, in Christ we live in the Spirit, not lawless, but love-filled. Romans 7 verse 6b. Paul concludes with a liberating affirmation. We serve in the new way of the Spirit and not in the old way of the written code. The Greek, kainoteiti, evokes freshness, newness, not simply in time, but in nature. This is resurrection life. The Spirit doesn't relax the standard of holiness. He animates the heart to pursue it with joy. William Hendrickson puts it well. The law said, do, and gave no power. The Spirit says, live, and provides what he commands. The believer's life is no longer about gritting our teeth to obey, but about abiding in Christ by the Spirit, who produces in us love, joy, peace, and power. This is not moral drift, it is Spirit-led devotion. A life no longer driven by fear or guilt, but lifted by the breath of God. Reflections for today. Are you trying to serve God while still fearing He's a judge with folded arms? Many believers live in a quiet courtroom of the soul, silenced by past failures, haunted by religious pressure, uncertain if grace is truly secure. The law still echoes in their minds, not as a guide, but as a gavel. They wear forgiveness like borrowed clothes, unsure if it really fits. What would it mean to live as one no longer on trial, but already embraced? Do you treat your union with Christ as a sacred covenant or a spiritual convenience? In a world of fluid commitments and relational exit strategies, covenant language jars us. To belong to Christ means more than occasional prayer or public association. It means fidelity, joy, and shared life. But how often do you drift into treating Jesus as an accessory to your plans rather than the center of your identity? Where has performance-based spirituality masked itself as faithfulness in your life? Some strive to be fruitful, but do so from anxiety, not abiding. Ministry becomes a treadmill. Devotion turns into metrics. Spiritual life is weighed by how much is done rather than how deeply one is connected to Christ. Could it be that some of your fruit is growing from pressure, not from the Spirit? In what ways do you quietly reimpose the law on yourself or others? Legalism is not always loud. It slips in through subtle comparisons, silent guilt, or expectations dressed in discipline. It thrives in self-talk that measures worth by performance and judges others by your personal standards. Could it be that grace has reached your theology, but not your inner dialogue? What part of your life is still running on fumes rather than resting in the Spirit's power? The modern world rewards exhaustion. Even in church life, weariness is mistaken for zeal. But the Spirit is not a taskmaster. He is a life-giver. Have you mistaken burnout for obedience? What would it look like to be led by someone who never drives you by fear, but draws you by love? Conclusion. Romans 7 verses 1 to 6 is not just a theological transition. It's a spiritual emancipation. You were once under the law, bound, condemned, fruitless. But in Christ, you died. You were raised. You now belong to another. And He is not a harsh master, but a loving husband. His Spirit indwells you. His life animates you. His joy strengthens you. So live as one who is no longer bound, but beloved. No longer weighed down, but filled up. No longer striving, but abiding. Because you are dead to the law and alive to Christ. And in Him, you are free indeed.